What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Supra Insider. This episode's a really fun one. We had two of my really good friends, Troy and Austin, join Marc and I to talk about how, as co-founders, they figured out how to escape building a bloated product that just added crap on top of crap and ultimately made something that people really loved using at their company, Guide. They really flipped their entire product philosophy upside down over the last 8 years working together. They tried a bunch of things, had a disillusioned period of really falling in love with jobs to be done and ultimately falling completely out of love with it, and went from taking 3 to 6 months to build things that they were really excited about that tied to long-term vision to shipping 1-2 week sprints and really giving customers solutions to the most pressing problems that they had and getting on the scoreboard by just like selling and selling. They also talked about their process of going from creating a brand new product in a new market and trying to just get budgets to exist where they didn't previously, to entering an existing market with their latest company, Guide, and how getting to feature parity with the competitors is the price of admission for getting people to try the new things that they're working on. This felt like a product consulting session, like I do with some founders as a product advisor. And I'm just really happy that they were willing to share it out in the open, like founder therapy. And yeah, so if you're a founder who is trying to figure out how to balance what your customers ask for versus like your vision and trying to translate what you're learning from sales calls to product decisions, this episode is for you. And the same if you're the product person who's finding yourself working with a founder or CEO or a primary, like very vocal go-to-market partner who wants to better influence the roadmap. So without further ado, enjoy this conversation with Austin Cooley and Troy Sultan from Guide. All right, guys, we are live. I am so excited. Austin, Troy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Troy came back. Troy came back. We had a great conversation.
Kicking and screaming.
We tell everyone we want to do a part 2, but with you, we were really itching for it because after we wrapped, we realized there's a whole massive part of what we're interested in and what you have thoughts about, which has to do with founder-led sales and what you've learned about how to make decisions based on all of the activities you do as a founder CEO out there selling. And then we talked about, hey, like, what would make that conversation even better is let's include Austin, because Austin has been in the trenches with you all along the way, figuring out how to take those insights and turn them into product decisions too. So I'm really excited that Austin could join us. Quick background for the audience. 3 of us met the same exact weekend, I think in the fall of 2011, back in Gainesville, Florida. So let's call it almost 14 years ago. And there was a 3-day weekend hackathon. And Austin's startup at the time, which tells you how long Austin's been a founder, was called Quilt. And Quilt was building an app that basically we used throughout the weekend to like share what we've been working on. It was like a social app to visually share what you're doing. And it was really cool. And basically Austin came in and sponsored the podcast. So he was like the actual entrepreneur in the room. And then Troy came in hot, winning a hackathon in Tallahassee for your thing at the time, Wordio, I believe. And Troy came in as like an advisor. And then I was just like actually participating in the hackathon with one of the teams that became Partender. So we go way back. And then the 2 of you met that weekend and we've been friends. So anyways, this is really special to see it come all the way full circle to talking about your co-founder marriage, basically. The last, how long has it been now? About 8 years that you two have been partners?
7 or 8, yeah. Working together.
Around there. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, first question I want to use to kick this off is probably for Troy, which is I've watched you navigate, really both of you, but I think Troy in a lot of ways as the CEO, this stuff has fallen on your shoulders ultimately to decide where product leadership sits with both Resource and now Guide. But I just love to hear your thoughts on like what's the journey been like for you as a founder CEO trying to find that product leadership role or that partner, that vacancy, and filling the vacancy and then rotating through different people in that process. And now ultimately, I'm not going to spill the beans, but I think it's Austin now. But I'd just love to hear how you've navigated that.
The pretext is that all of the products that I've worked on have originated from a problem that I had in my job as a recruiter or something similar. And so when we began building in the space, my opinions, my sort of default role was the customer. I had this half founder, half customer, because we were selling in all of our company's cases together, selling into effectively the role that I stepped out of to found the company. So I kind of had the initial customer earned secret, if you will. And so by default, whether I wanted to be the product leader or not, I had really strong opinions I was married to, and ended up in some sort of hybrid sales product role. I think as Austin and I both built trust, experimented a lot, and Austin endured probably 5 years, maybe 6 years of me kicking and screaming and not wanting to let go of the damn product baton. At the same time, Austin building his domain expertise with our customer all the while. It's a lot of kind of complexity behind the scenes. There was some juncture at which I let go of the baton. Austin took off with it. And since I have felt truly not only liberated personally, like I can focus on my real strengths on the go-to-market and customer side alone, but I can work with Austin at the level of vision and strategy, which I really love. And then Austin is just so much better than me at taking that down to the metal. And we've just had better results. And I think so my psychology has shifted a lot, as has our way of operating around this. It's really been a very tactical, iterative evolution for like many years.
Maybe I can just add, that's definitely one of the main reasons I decided to join Resource 8 years ago, was because of the product expertise from the domain knowledge that Troy was coming in with. So I was also coming off of being the CEO and really not wanting as much responsibility, but still wanting to be a founder, deeply involved in building the product. And then over time, obviously, I kind of like realized, no, I really do want to be more in a product leadership role. And that is what I love. But one thing that Troy left out is we went through a number of product leaders over that period as well. So I'd be curious too to hear from you, Troy, the process of, I feel like we've had always full trust on the sort of, you're kind of the go-to-market expert and I'm the technology expert, but the product leadership piece, that took the longest, and we cycled through a number of product leaders. So I'd love to just hear, how did you decide to stop handing over the reins to other people?
Conveniently left that part out. I think, every year, lately, I think Austin and I we're at a different point of our lives, and we've worked together long enough that this might be worth talking about in terms of product collaboration, where we don't kind of talk that much on some level about this stuff. We have like big syncs, and then we will run for months without really doing much on the product strategy side. Like we know our lanes, and we're able to go for longer periods of time as a result of how long we've worked together. But so maybe we bookmark that. It's interesting. But Austin, we would check in every year or 6 months, and we'd be like, I remember I had opinions about what I thought Austin was world class at. He was always, I hope, able to share his opinions on me. But one of those questions was always like, where is your zone of genius? What do you love? What are you getting energy from? What are you really good at? And my opinion for many years, the first 4 or 5, was it was very clear to me that Austin had a really unique skill set in being a strong 0 to 1 technical leader and builder, and also like the communication skills and temperament as a manager to grow as a leader of a large engineering organization. Like I thought he had 0.01% skills there. It was not a part of his prior experience to run or lead product, and we often would clash on our intuitions of the like user experience on the Leon product. So it was always this territory where I was skeptical, and Austin didn't have a lot of fervor. It wasn't like he was waking up every day saying, I can only be happy if I run product. So as a result, we would look elsewhere. Whenever there was, we both either co-own it, or we'd have we had somebody else come in and run product as a VP at some point who had skills that Austin and I didn't, and was exceptional at certain things, but didn't have enough of a shared psychology with our user. If he were building for other product managers, he might have been one of the best heads of product on the planet. Building for recruiters was a very different psychology, and me and Austin understood that a lot more, and we didn't have 5 years to get the product leader over the learning curve there. So there was a lot of testing and just experimenting along the way.
Yeah, what I'm hearing Yeah, go ahead, Marc. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think what's interesting is it almost, so you've known each other for 8 years. I'm basically like around the 6th year. That's when Troy, you were like, okay, like I feel ready to let go of the product and maybe strategy or being that person that holds the product direction. And it seems like maybe there's like two things that were key there. One is you having trust that Austin was the right person and knowing, hey, like he knows the customer almost as well as I do, or if not better now. And then the second one is also, it seems like there's maybe like a psychology shift that you went through that I'm ready to let this go, because if I want to take the company to the next level, this needs to happen so I can focus on the real things that matter. Like, I'm curious, like what led you to realize maybe that second part that, hey, I need to do this if I want to continue growing the company, if that was the realization at all?
I might think in retrospect that it was born of necessity, where I think there's this other shift happening all the while through the story where we couldn't get go to market quite right. Me and Austin together have gotten, I might be wrong here, 4 or 5 different products, almost entirely different products to like $1 million ARR or something, totally separately, back to back in the grind. And we just couldn't get them fucking past that. It was like, okay, we got the 0 to $1 million thing going on, but like, how the hell do we get past this? And I think during that part of the journey, I come to the conclusion that I was half owning all the functions, including go-to-market and product, or at least wearing that identity. And as a result, I not only wasn't able to let go or own product fully, but I also wasn't able to get our go-to-market apparatus to the next level. I really needed to be the 0 to 1 owner of these functions. And we were hiring people in too early many of those times on both sides. So it created all these second order effects. So I think once I realized I really need to step in with both feet, say on founder-led sales, there was definitely a role in product for me, which was a conduit to product. But there was something else that happened for that first piece you mentioned, Marc, which is Austin all the while started to get, once he put on the product hat, he started going from like CTO behind the scenes to having daily conversations with customers. And I think that changed a lot in my trust, where then our intuition started to align a lot more.
I think that's where I started to build the confidence that our intuitions were almost on par, or I might even be spending more time with the day-to-day users of our product. And it just made more sense at that point, because we just needed you so focused on the go-to-market side.
So Austin,
it was kind of the sweet spot there.
Did you, as part of that process, also, just like Troy, started trusting you more on the product side as your confidence grew from increased exposure to customers? Did you then also start trusting and delegating more engineers on the team to step up into more technical leadership roles to give you more time to start spending with customers and focusing on product?
Yeah, that's super astute, because it was finding a pretty key engineer hire that, you know, we didn't hire as an engineering leader, but just has extremely strong leadership qualities that really wanted to take on more, was asking for more responsibility, saying like, how do we get you out of the code base? And that was never a question that I was asking myself. I was always thinking, I need to be in there. I need to be contributing so we can continue to move fast. And having somebody that was like, no, actually, we need you leveling up, so I'm going to take on more responsibility, gave me the freedom to play more of that role. There's times where I was doing it full time. I don't usually do full-time product. I'm usually spread across a couple functions, but we needed that. And I was able to do that because we had an engineer that was saying, just put it all on my plate. So that was a pretty big unlock, I think.
Yeah, the other thing that's coming, I mean, that I'm glad that was true, because my spidey sense was pointing there must have been something that was also, just like Troy was kind of, if almost like product is in the middle and then go to market is on one side and engineering is on the other side. Austin was getting pulled towards engineering as your zone of genius, and then Troy's getting pulled into go to market, and then in the middle there's this product function where neither of you is, maybe Austin doesn't have the time to supersede Troy's customer expertise and customer empathy, and Troy is inherently going to be the customer expert, and at the same time there's no one else that could fit into that product leadership role that would supersede either of your customer intuitions, while also understanding the technical considerations and the sales insights. So it sounds like that engineering hire actually does strike me as a very meaningful piece of the puzzle that allowed Austin to start to get in there. And then before you guys like react or whatever. The other thing that was coming to mind to me is like, we've talked in, I forget which, a previous episode about how when I think about, forget about co-founders, but just like any tech company, and you just think of a product manager and you think about what makes people trust the product manager on their team, the theme that I've seen most consistently across my entire career and from the people I coach and the people that complain to me about their PMs not being good, when I dig into it, it's always some flavor. I don't trust that they understand the customer, and I don't trust that they understand the problem, and that their intuition is not strong enough. And so I think it's really interesting to tie it back to this situation where that actually played a really big role, even if Austin's not a PM per se, just like the ownership of the product function inherently. Troy probably never heard me say that before, but that's where your intuition went, is like your trust in Austin as a product leader was heavily influenced by your assessment of his understanding of the customer and the problems.
Our philosophy behind the scenes actually changed, our product philosophy over the years. And in the early days, we had a very idealistic approach, the Elon master plan. How do we go from this to that? And this 10-year, 20-year vision was going to be laid out up front. We also had a third co-founder who was really a de facto product leader for our first company, Resource, years ago, who was very smart and was very passionate about the jobs to be done philosophy. So that like penetrated our company, and we became like zealots of JTBD. And I think in retrospect, at least the way we got taken by that, it basically cut off both of our feet, and we like ran around with our head, like with no direction, like no real progress for like years, maybe, before we like totally shifted our philosophy. And we would hear customers telling us what they wanted for years, and we're in B2B SaaS, and we'd be like, but what's the like real job to be done? We'd go spend our cycles for months trying to invent some novel solution. And part of it was we didn't have the right team at the time. We couldn't execute well. There was a lot of factors, but really the philosophy, I think, was handicapping us tremendously. Whereas Austin and I have over time gotten less idealistic, less vision oriented, actually, and more pragmatic about our product philosophy, in that customer has problem, get them fastest solution, and then earn the right to like refactor our system over time with more novel approaches that are more coherent or cohesive. And we were always worried, oh, our product's gonna get bloated. Oh, this competitor over here their customers are leaving us because the product's too bloated, or it's got all these features and switches everywhere. That's not what customers want. I think we just had to really dial in our ICP. Who do we serve? Do they have pain? Where is the pain? Are we solving the pain? That was the only question that mattered. We didn't care about how novel the solution was, if it was copied from another product, it was a paradigm we were borrowing, whatever. Do they have pain? Does it exist tomorrow? If yes, we're not doing a great job. It's like, that's our product philosophy. I'm probably being a little reductive, but that's been the other side of the spectrum we've gravitated towards.
The only thing I would tweak about that is that I think that jobs to be done, I'm still a big believer in that.
Yep.
And I think we were so idealistic and we were so vision focused that they would be telling us, and you could use the jobs to be done framework to determine what it is that would cause them to switch to our product. And we wouldn't build it because we'd be like, it's not part of the master plan. And ultimately, we went and built it, and now we have a much healthier business. But so I think it was like conflating a bit there, because we really thought we knew where this was going to end up 5 years from now, and we just couldn't get off that track for a while, regardless of what our jobs to be done interviews were telling us.
Man, I have so many questions, but I think that, first of all, I knew you guys were really into jobs to be done because you talked to me a lot about it when you guys first got exposed to the Kool-Aid and you were drinking it. But I don't think we've ever actually circled back to any of the downsides or like the prices that you feel like you may have paid by over-indexing on it. And then I actually have never, this is the first time I'm ever hearing a direct connection between jobs to be done and like vision, and having some trade-off between those, and perhaps having a more pragmatic approach to building what people want. So I think the dots are connecting. So just to summarize, to make sure I was following this last part, it sounds like you guys embrace the jobs to be done framework, which meant you're going to talk to customers, they're going to tell you what they want. You're not going to ever take that as a direct order or like thing that you should do, but instead try to unpack what they're getting at, like what's the actual job they're trying to do. And then you would often find yourselves going into very almost like unnecessarily complicated workarounds or product discussions to figure out how to evolve the product to solve the problem in a more holistic way that's aligned to the longer term vision versus to do something that could be considered a one-off improvement that would directly just give them what they're asking for.
Yeah, I would say to emphasize Austin's point, we also didn't execute well. So the philosophy wasn't only at play. We also were dealing with, I think, a less mature hiring function and a team building apparatus in Austin I's brain where we just didn't have the right personnel. And so that also led to like further, because we were trying to do the harder thing or the more novel approach and we weren't executing well, it was like doubly costly.
I'm also, what I heard that was interesting too, and I might be making assumptions here, but because you were using the job to be done and you were also trying to connect it back to the vision, it almost feels like the feedback cycles that you had with customers were a lot longer. Like you would maybe do some discovery, then you would like trying to do all this inward work of trying to figure out, oh, how does this fit with our master strategy? Like, how can we build this like great plan work backwards, as opposed to now you have an idea, you get feedback, you go back, you build it. So it almost feels like the pragmatic approach has been like, let's talk to customer more often as opposed to try to spend all this time inwards. Is that also part of it as well?
And then solve their problem as fast as possible, it sounds like, right? Like what's the fastest way we can give them a solution to that thing?
Ship it, see the data. Ship it. If it's not right, we can either argue about it for 5 more hours, we can ship it and let users tell us.
We were prone to getting caught up in semantics so frequently. And so just trying to find the right words to describe the job to be done we were solving, and even like framing the statement exactly the way the framework tells you to state it so we could figure out what feature we should build. And I think it was just like, it was our Bible at the time because this co-founder was a huge fan and would drink the Kool-Aid. But now I think we're back into just, ship, validate, iterate, ship again.
It is a bit of a dance, though, I will say. We're always subtly debating whether we should do the short-term solution that we know will carry debt versus the midterm with a little less debt versus the long-term with the least debt. But I would say on average, we skew a lot more pragmatic today, earn the right to refactor much more than the old days. And I find we've found just an order of magnitude more success with that strategy in enterprise B2B SaaS, I would say.
Can you give like an example that is not like, I don't know, confidential or something, something that maybe used to, like something that maybe you recently did in the pragmatic way, like you actually you did the new process that's working better, and what you would have perhaps done with that same thing in the old way where you were like overcomplicating or getting stuck on semantics? I'm just curious if we could flesh out a real example.
This may not be the best example, Austin, but I'm thinking of Slack channel creation versus copy paste. That's just something that came to mind. I don't know if that strikes a chord with you.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. We can talk through it for just how we aggressively scope, which is probably the fastest way to get something shipped and iterate. Whereas we don't ship 6 months projects anymore. We don't even ship 3-month projects. Whereas in resource days, we would let ourselves iterate without actually shipping for months, and then finally ship, and then finally learn one way or the other. And often it was not the success that we hoped it had. So yeah, this example here, we have recruiting teams and you schedule a panel of interviews and you need to get everybody into a Slack channel so that they can all communicate. Well, it turns out that the most manual part of that process isn't creating the Slack channel. It's constructing the schedule in text so you can paste it in there so they all know what to expect and they can talk about the interviews. So instead of building this whole Slack integration that automatically manages the people and creates the channels, we just created a button that lets you copy the upcoming interview schedule as text. It took 30 minutes to write. We used AI, and the customer love we're getting for this feature is massive, and it's just a tiny project in comparison. And so we just shipped the fastest thing we could that shipped some of the value, and then we'll just keep building on top of that.
So just to make sure I'm following, so let's say, I know, Troy, you talked about last time that you mentioned, what company was it where the person who's overseeing recruiting used to run? Notion. Okay, so let's say I'm the recruiting team at Notion and I asked for the ability, it's, hey guys, I really want to have like a Slack place to talk to the panel about the upcoming loop and make sure everyone's on the same page in the same space. So one path you could have taken, which was like bloated or bigger path, is let's build a full-blown integration, and a click of a button will create a Slack channel, invite the right people, and then it would also post some kind of message in there and just automate that whole thing. And then the 30-minute solution was, let's only focus on a copy function for taking the schedule. And then basically let's just trust the people to create the channel on their own, invite the right people on their own, and just paste this agenda, this schedule in there, and then they can just do everything on their own. Is that right?
That's a great, I think, articulation of the scoping process, and that illustrates that. If I'm going to go on a limb here and just, this is fun, Austin, you could tell me if you think I'm like being hyperbolic or we'd actually maybe be in this territory. But in 7 years ago at Resource, had we had this same problem, I think our dialogue might have been something like, ooh, what progress are we really trying to solve here? Oh, recruiters really need to communicate with interviewers. Why are they going to Slack? We should be owning the messaging. Why don't we get interviewers into our product and make the single place where all communications around recruiting is happening? And then we go into some rabbit hole trying to actually go against the tide of, hey, interviewers live in Slack all day. They don't want another tool. Let's use that as a constraint. We would go like too idealistic. We'd say, they'd be happier. These users would be happier if we developed a more novel way that they can get the information that they need. And so maybe this isn't a perfect example, but that's the difference in this like theoretical jobs to be done. Our job is to really invent the solution. Nowadays, we'll say, oh, you're already living in Slack. That's already where your habits are built. Let's just get you a micro feature that's going to make your day a little bit better, and let's get it to you tomorrow. And it's a very different, practical, day-to-day conversational experience for us, I think.
It's also consistent with something you stated earlier, which is that you guys have a much more clear and crisp understanding of who your target customer is now and who your audience is. And you guys are not building something that I think is designed for the fifth interviewer on the panel. You're building something that's for the talent teams and the recruiting coordinators and the people that are actually responsible for running the recruiting process, right? Because that heuristic makes it a no-brainer that you shouldn't bring the fifth interviewer into Guide. That's not who you're supposed to serve primarily.
In this case, I would argue that given we care about all the personas that use our product, and if the interviewer is getting some information powered by Guide and Slack, say, I actually think it's more of an argument. Like because we care about the interviewer's experience in that scenario more than the coordinator, we don't go force the interviewer out of Slack. The coordinator just wants the interviewer to get the information. So maybe they'd be more amenable to this crazy solution I'm proposing. Probably not, but maybe more than the interviewers. Interviewers are going to say, screw off. I do what I do. I tell you where I want my information. You don't tell me, recruiting team. So I think because we have to factor and weight the care of each persona in the loop, we go, how do they already operate? What's the lowest friction path to get more value, instead of what would be the idealistic future that all these people might want, in our opinion.
So sorry, just to keep going, but you've got my juices flowing at this point. So in this example, do you think that the recruiting coordinator's experience is diminished because they had to take this conversation into Slack instead of having it inside of Guide? Is that a trade-off?
Not in the short term, unless you disagree, Austin. It's more like, in the past, we'd say, theoretically speaking, let's go to the drawing board and conjure up something that might be better for all. The coordinator, we've realized today, what do they really care about? They want their interviewers to stop bitching at them and just easily get what they need, self-service, without the coordinator having to do work. This solves enough for both. Maybe in the long term, there's some magical solution we haven't thought of yet, but we're not going to spend the cycles on that now. We're going to give them value tomorrow. It's going to take too long, and it's too unguaranteed that we'll come up with that solution.
Yeah, that's really it. Is we would just kind of design too far out into the future. We would design. It's not that ultimately it wouldn't be valuable to both sides. It's just that why would we go spend a month on that when we can get 70% of the value with way less work? And so we're just more amenable to that and ignoring our intuition to design from first principles this like like Troy's saying, this magical solution to the problem.
One other thought on parallel threading. One thing we have to do in this like early stage startup mode where we're like standing the company up from scratch and we've got arguably more customers than we can support at times or whatever's breaking. We're on product and prioritization is what's really hard is we have what literally feels like 15 P0s at any time. So the question becomes, how do you stack rank 15 P0s? And I think by doing this really incremental approach, shipping the copy and paste feature on Slack, we can go an inch forward over here, an inch forward over here, an inch forward on this other P0, and we can play whack-a-mole with them versus going further on one and having a 0 on the other. Because the customer is very, I would say, amenable when they're getting some progress. The users want to see progress, dots on a line. They don't need the be-all, end-all tomorrow. They just want to feel like their experience is getting better. And I think that has been a fairly big paradigm shift for us as well.
I think too, there, just to add one more thing to that, which we struggled with a bit with the design team over the years, but the designers have to be amenable to doing a lot of work that does not get built. And I think when you don't have the mentality of, okay, we're going to do as much research, we're going to talk to customers, we're going to build the ideal solution as far as possible, and then recognize that we're not going to build that whole solution. We're going to build that 10%, and then we're going to come back based on demand. And you might have 20 projects that are beautifully designed and not scoped at all, and you just don't get to see all of them come to light. If you're frustrated by that, you would not fit in here. And I think it's just essential to the way that we operate. And you'd have to talk to our designer, but I think that seeing customers stoked to get progress made of any kind is better than working on one project and just getting your ego hit of seeing your project get fully shipped.
Yeah. I mean, I think the two factors that are really interesting here is that I think compound is, one is I think the execution part of it that you were mentioning of, I think you're building a muscle within the company, within product, within engineering of like, we're going to move fast. We're going to ship like every week. And there's also like the other factor is the learning. Like, I think you're learning a lot quicker when you throw something out there, people use it. It's not just like user feedback. You actually get the data. You actually see how they use it. What are the limitations? And I think those two things together, like, you just learn and get to the truth and to the ideal state a lot faster than if you just waited 6 months to ship. But I think, I wouldn't say I want to push back a little bit, but I think like a question that I'm curious to get your thoughts on, if I was going to take the other side of the argument, is of that approach is that you're just incrementally making your product better, right? And that you're not really taking big swings at things. So I'm curious, like, how can you, if you, let's say you like see an opportunity that's completely new, how would you take that approach to getting that 0 to 1 from scratch, basically?
I'll cue you up, Austin. My TLDR will be one of those 15 P0s is like our innovation thread. And it's always got to be running, and there's a cost to not having it running. And it's just running alongside of all the short-term stuff that's going on. And mind you, all of the context that Austin and I are speaking is this kind of 0 to 1 phase. We're trying to get to product market fit on the thing. And that thing is a big thing that we're taking the swing on in a way. Of course, the question remains, how do we continue to innovate and not get out innovated by somebody else? And that's where we always need an R&D function running. That's, Austin, you could talk about how we segment work and what constitutes the future work versus our custom sales enablement versus else.
Yeah, we have these categories, and one of them is product market fit and differentiation, right? When we go into a deal and it's clear why they would go with us versus somebody else. And that's a different category of work than just continual progress for our existing customers, which is a different category of work than maybe sales enablement, which I know we want to talk about, which is how do we make sure that prospects are excited about what's coming or what's being built or what's built that we haven't actually built yet. But even, I would just argue that even in that innovation category, the big swing, we have to operate in the exact same way. That can't be the 6-month project that doesn't see the light of day until it's finished. So it's just its own product sometimes, where you're working internally dog fooding, and then you're working with a design partner, and then you're showing mocks, and then you've actually shipped something. So it's just which track you're on. But the innovation track is definitely more first principles thinking, creation of something new. And we're definitely spending a lot of time on that, more so recently than in the past. But I would say that a lot of the principles apply to each of those different tracks.
I feel like you guys have probably historically, I don't want to say you've over-indexed on 0 to 1, but something tells me that you guys might be more comfortable with 0 to 1 than like 1 to 100 or 100 to 10,000 kind of work based on what you were saying in the intro. Troy, it sounds like
we wouldn't know, to be honest.
I mean, you got to a million. But you said you've gotten to 1 million ARR on 4 or 5 different products, right?
Yep.
Should I not interpret that in other words, like we went 0 to 1 on 4 to 5 different products to
we
a
got
million
to product
ARR,
market fit,
right? Like,
and then there were various reasons why we like hopped to the next thing that we can talk about.
And then there's this part of the process that's like going from 1 million to, I don't know, 10 million or 100 million ARR that let's hope you're currently on the path to get you there this time around. Does it feel like founders I've worked with in the past, there's always a little bit of a shiny object syndrome, that there's something else that's going to be the big win, and like the thing we're doing right now just feels incremental, and if we just do these incremental things, there's all this paranoia that kicks in. Obviously you've raised VC funding, so you have to grow into really big valuation to make investors happy and stuff. Do you feel like there's a level of excitement that you get these days about thinking about incremental work and scaling in the more, I don't want to say mundane, but like the less shiny objecty kind of way of operating? Because honestly, the biggest business I've seen firsthand, they get the right thing, and then almost like all the operationalizing of the scaling and the growth is just an extremely different set of skills and muscles than getting to that initial product market fit. And some people just don't get excited about the scaling part.
I don't know what your take on this, Austin, is, but I would say probably for both of us, but our journey has been be really idealistic. We're young. We have all this time. We have a lot of energy. Let's go for these big swings that are low odds. We'd way rather swing for the fences, the grand slam, and miss 5 times. Super optimized on that philosophy. And over time, we've shifted to, holy shit, we get a lot of energy from winning in the day-to-day and the week-to-week. Like going to win that deal against that competitor really energizes us. And so it's shifted over time. And I think in the grand global scheme, like the pendulum keeps moving. We went from one side all the way to the other. Now we're getting a lot of week-to-week wins, and we want to start innovating again to make sure we don't hit a dead end. And that's getting us really excited. So I think somebody we worked with in the really early days of our first company had this philosophy that came from his manager, I think, or somewhere. And he just kept, it's probably very commonly cited, but it was something like, growth solves all problems. In the early days of our first company, like we weren't growing. Like we had all these dramatic people problems. We were always having one-on-ones about this person's performance and this person's motivation. And then there was just problems everywhere. And when shit is growing, nobody has problems. Everyone just wants to be here. Everybody's motivated and wants to work. And we've like shifted towards like, just get the customer to tell us what they want. We'll build the thing. They'll pay us for it. We'll go get more customers. And so far, we've been pretty fucking happy doing that. Maybe there'll be some plateau and we'll need to do some other concoction of things. But largely, I've found that getting those near-term wins, those feedback cycles from real market is very motivating.
Yeah, it's a lot more motivating than the lofty vision that you're just every day you're getting kicked in the face. And everyone's excited for where we're going, but we're not going there fast. Whereas I feel like now you get those wins, everyone's stoked, everyone's feeling good. You still need to have a strategy and a vision, but we're not so tied to the one at the company founding or whatever it is that we initially envisioned. We're way more excited to bring customers along on the journey and have them teach us more than us just knowing the answers.
Marc, I'm curious what you're going to ask, but I just want to also get your reaction to something before you ask it, which is like, there is this, I mean, you know, Troy and Austin, you guys I'm sure you're disconnected from some of the product community discourse because you guys have honestly more important stuff to think about. But some of the discourse in the product community is about this like differentiation between like empowered product teams, like feature teams that are building, like feature teams are these teams that are like basically building what customers tell them that they want. And then empowered product teams are people that like fall in love with the problem and they do all this discovery, and kind of sounds maybe operate a little bit more in that mode of the way that you guys used to perhaps approach product development. And I published a post on Lenny's about how doing product management in feature factory environments is a legitimate form of product management. And a lot of people agree with me, but there's still this holdout of people that are like product purists that think that there's something fundamentally wrong with just building like what people want and like what they ask for. And so I'm just struck by how this evolutionary iterative process that you just walked us through basically led you to a conclusion that if the goal is to win and the goal is to get on the scoreboard, and the people that like the way you get on the scoreboard is by closing new business and like making sales, then if you give people that are saying, I will sign this if you do this, or we will expand if you do this, and then you guys just do it and deliver it to them without, obviously like the scoping part is important. If you could spend 30 minutes on giving them what they want and they're satisfied, that's better than spending a week or 2 weeks on it, but still giving them what they want sounds like where you've ended up landing. And I don't know if I have a question there, but I think it's interesting.
I wonder, Austin, how you would, there's like a background context here that matters, which is our first couple companies and couple products were what you would call today in the like jargon category creators or intended category creators. There was no product in the market for this. We were the first. There was no budget from teams for this at companies, no line item. So we came in and had to like educate our customer on why they would want this thing. We weren't saying, hey, here's why your current CRM is a problem and why this new CRM is going to work. They already know what a CRM is. They already use one. It's a totally different conversation. They already pay for one. So it's about persuading them that the budget should go to you. So for our first couple companies, we were deeply in this ideological space, not just in the execution mode, but at the level of what we chose to build and bring to market. And in our latest iteration of Guide, it's the first product and company we've ever built where we're coming into an existing category of products in today what would be considered like interview scheduling automation, where there's it's a small category. Few existing players have been around for, in some cases, 8 or 9 years. There's already established budgets and norms. And so we come in and we get to build the thing you want or need, while at the same time going, how can we build a truly innovative version of this that looks totally new relative to the thing that they're using? Oh, our thesis at Guide is your scheduling automation tools aren't actually that automated. We looked at it. You're spending 30 clicks to go from the start of the process to the end. We have AI now and we have smart technology and better user experience. Why don't we actually show you what this looks like when your scheduling automation tool actually automates this for you? So it's the same progress from a job to be done standpoint. It's just a better solution. And so we still get to do the innovation, but in the context of, we don't feel like we're inventing the product. We just feel like we're inventing a better version of an existing solution. Does that make sense? It's a little nuanced.
Yeah, and you need basic feature parity on some of the things that they require from existing solutions just to to pay the price of admission for them to even care about anything that you do differently or better.
100%.
I think that's where the like feature factory feeling comes from. And nobody wants to feel like they're just waking up every day and getting told what to do next. And they're just like a code monkey that picks up the next ticket. But the reality is that we needed to build those things anyways, because our product isn't that valuable without them. They're table stakes for a reason. They're problems that our customers face. And so if we go into a deal and they're telling us, hey, this thing is table stakes for us, I think at this point, we're also bought into the progress we're trying to make for our customers, that it doesn't feel like, oh, we're just doing this to close some deal. It feels like this is just the new priority. This is just the next customer that comes along of many that are going to need this feature. And so this is just an opportunity for us to go solve this problem. And it's a really exciting thing. So it just doesn't feel like it's getting shoved down your throat like I imagine people think of like a feature factory.
Yeah. And I think that the thing that also feels unique here is that you're both like so experienced in that field, right? Like Troy, you've been in it for 15 years, right? And Austin, sounds like you've been in it for 8 years. And I think when you know that problem space so well, and I think you probably didn't get into this, but there's like a level of conviction, there's a level of understanding that allows you to be very creative, right, on the solution. And you hear something and you know, hey, actually, here's the important thing, right? And I think that's what allows you to probably move quicker and make decisions that maybe feel very obvious, like, oh, of course, that's what they want, but you're almost translating what they need and creating something. And you're able to do that translation so quickly because you have lived in that space for combined 20 years, which is pretty unique.
You'd be surprised how uncertain we are still with the innovation bets. And we do a lot of selling ahead of the product. Like we are big fans of, for example, Austin and his team are knocking out the table stakes stuff for a year. I'm over in the sales process with our customers and prospects where we're fans of, I think, what we call marketing vignettes. So we create a slide in a slide deck that is our designer does a version of the feature. It's like a website level depiction of a feature. Fairly high-fi, but not perfect fidelity. And then we have a description on the left of the slide. It's like the marketing description. It would be the call out text in the website in that section of the feature, right? If it were on a website. So like visual call out, text call out that describes the value prop. And we'll have 5 of these rotating at a time. Totally random features like that we envision will be like aha moments for customers, but we have no idea, in fact, if that's true. A great example of where we were wrong is when we were first looking at LLMs, our customers they'll join Guide and will sync from their core internal systems in ATS like 400 email templates used across their company from their previous system. And they need to communicate through our system now. So we sync them so they don't have to build all of these again. But like they're maybe using 50 of those 400. It's like this giant mess that they deal with. And it's almost as much of a headache to sync. So when LLMs came out, the obvious like use case was, oh, we can use generative AI to like just write more personalized templates for recruiters for their candidates. No brainer. Built a marketing vignette, started showing it to people. And we immediately realized that no recruiter was excited about this. It was actually giving them more anxiety. And when we dug into that, it was that recruiters they need predictability and control. So the idea that this message that they sent every time to a different candidate in the same context would be different each time was a huge regression in value from using an email template. They're like, wait, I built the template once. It says exactly what I want to say in this context. And I know it's going to say that exact thing word for it every time. So actually a template is way more valuable to me than some fancy LLM that you're talking to me about. I don't want this to change. And that was like a very interesting moment. And there are many of these that go in the opposite direction where for a year, we've been putting a feature that we're planning and plan to build. It's a huge build where our product will be communicating with your interviewers in Slack to resolve calendar conflicts using LLMs. And every customer in a year that's seen our vignette is like, holy shit, when does that come? This is such a pain. And yes, we have to get into now all the execution details beyond a slide of how this thing actually works. What controls do you have? Who can approve and not? What are the configurability? What's the range of configurability? All these things that we haven't figured out yet. But we know that this is getting pull because we're getting pull, like we're getting direct pull on this thing. So we do quite a lot of that. And that in a lot of ways is our innovation machine until we get so much conviction and current customers are complaining. We get alignment from current customers, prospects, and maybe the renewal, the longer tail, where, you know what? There's a billion things we could do right now that we need to do. These 3 align on all 3 core categories right now and are aligned with our long-term vision. That's a no-brainer. Let's stack rank those 3 first.
Can I get a little bit more tactical here? So I'm curious, one, how do you, like when you're showing those slides, like how are you mentioning? Is this like, this is in our roadmap, here's something we're thinking about, and it's going to launch soon. Like, how do you frame that? And then like, what is that sequencing of getting those like 3 buckets that you mentioned aligned? Is it first you get the signal from the sales and then you talk to Austin as, hey, Austin, I'm hearing this. What are you hearing from existing customers? Or like, hey, go find out. Like, how does that work?
I would say there's 2 stages. One is when we're inventing the concept. It's like a brand new product. We want to come to market. We have a hypothesis. We can build a better scheduling automation system. We go build 5 vignettes that illustrate what will be different with ours. We go convince a bunch of would-be customers that are using other competitors, get on calls. We show them the slides. And we see how much, when we ask them, we try to be intentional with our questions. And we try to see how likely they would be to switch if these things existed. It's going to have all of what you already have, plus this stuff will be different. And then more day-to-day for us is we have new features.
One follow-up there. So what do you need to hear to know that's actually real? Because I think a mistake that I've done in the past, like, people think, oh yeah, we totally use that, and then they never use it, right? I think like the true sign is like, hey, are you going to sign an LOI?
It's the stated preference versus the revealed behavior is the crux of it, right?
Yeah, Austin can vouch, but I'm a huge stickler of stated versus the revealed versus stated. I just don't believe in most stated. So we try to get as close to we can when there's no way to get revealed. We just get as close to we can. We'll put a contract in front of them. We'll ask them to join our DPP, which requires an hour a week of their time. Any friction to show real commitment. And then usually, like in the beginning, it's, I think the research we were doing, Austin, a year and a half ago with scheduling was like getting into the budget. Who owns this budget? And we need the budget owner to tell us that, like, we needed some line of questioning that would tell us there's actual, like, how much money can we get here? And in a lot of ways, you can read between the lines when you do it enough. Dodginess, not willing to book the next call, sending a Calendly and they get the next call 3 weeks later instead of 3 days later. These are all subtle signs that there just isn't strong pull.
And I would also say that of all the jobs to be done, tactics, the switching moment interview is my favorite because it is all about actual behavior. So if you can find a customer that has switched their scheduling tool, we would try to do research and understand the timeline, everything that led up to them actually pulling the trigger and moving systems. Because a lot of the people we talk to have moved systems before and they were interested in taking this call and moving again. So really going deep on if they haven't switched before and actually pulled the trigger, what led them to talk to us? Why were they even interested? Because those are actual behaviors that you can look at that aren't just stated preference. And then the vignettes often are good research, they're product research for us, and they're validating a lot of the concepts. But
it's also for Troy to say, yo, I think we can fucking sell this. We can sell this.
Sure.
It's more of a...
What's the process like, Troy? So like, because we've been like definitely wanting to talk about founder-led sales. So let's just dive into that part. So what's the process for you to, like you said, I heard a couple of things so far. It's like, I'm selling ahead of the product. So I'm like, there's table stakes that exist today, but that's, I don't know what percentage of your pitch to a given customer is spent talking about what exists versus like where it's heading and where it could be. But maybe we could start there. And then how do you like tactically share with Austin excitement signals? What's the mechanism through which the market pull from people who are not yet paying guide get turned into decisions about what to actually build?
Yeah, to connect with Mark's question earlier, today we will lean on what we haven't built and these vignettes in a sales demo to the degree that our current product isn't compelling enough. Lately, I think we've gotten to the point where our actual demo only would include vignettes if we are trying to do market research or test something that's like above and beyond coming down the pipe. Historically, with the hard part, which is when you don't have the table stakes features yet that everybody needs to switch, and you gotta fake it till you make it, you gotta share why one would take the trade-off to go with you even though you don't have all the stuff, then we would focus on vignettes in the demo. Here's what we have. Here's what's going to be released in the next month or two, which would likely be would go live ahead of how long it would take us to go through procurement. So we're happy if this is really important to you, we're happy to even paper it into the contract to guarantee this is live before then. We do a lot of that for stuff that we don't yet have. So it's all framed as coming or in process, depending on where it's in our roadmap. And some customers like want to take the bet. Some customers, more customers probably want to get updates in a month or two and see that we actually build it. Some customers are just going to lag. But I clip pretty religiously. It takes a lot of my time. We record all of our sales calls. I clip and share to the whole team in Slack, often even supercut. I will supercut multiple demos together into like a 5 or 10 minute clip of multiple demos, just the components, showing where I'm doing that research, or the customer commentary where the customer's language, without us giving them the language, is verbatim to our key hypothesis of the value we want to deliver with this feature, we think we can deliver, or how differentiated, if that's our goal, versus another version from a competitor. We'll hear the customer say, I thought this was going to be similar to X. This is totally different. And we're like, we're starting to nail the differentiation goal that we had on this. So we will clip it and we're religious about it.
And Austin is drinking from the same fire hose as the rest of the team. Or Austin, I saw you were going to speak. So if you want to take this one.
Yeah, maybe just speaking specifically to this period of time where our product was not yet compelling enough. And so we were doing what we could in the sales process. I would say that on the product side, that's going to make folks uncomfortable. It definitely initially made me uncomfortable. And I think the things that helped me get over that uncomfortability were understanding our team's velocity so that I actually trusted that we could build what we said we were going to build. But then also knowing that not every one of these prospects is going to close. So if we can basically test in advance which of these features prospects would want, take the opportunity. This is one thing I really loved, is take the opportunity to go with the design team and actually then put mocks in front of the prospect. And it's like a research thing for us. And then they feel like, oh, this is actually getting built. And then we've even gone as far as building the prototype, like the really cheap MVP that we don't even ship to our users, to just say, hey, here's that feature we told you about. So we've gone to any level, and sometimes it has to be a big enough deal for us to go that far. But we're excited to do that work because honestly, it's just advanced product work, right? We're going to nail that feature when we do come around to building it, whether this prospect ends up closing or not. And then the other thing about the fire hose, yes, we're all drinking from the same fire hose from Troy sharing clips, but we do keep a pretty close, I would say, cadence post big calls with new customers. We're getting in huddles pretty regularly, just talking through those things to understand feasibility from the product side. Can we put together something? And then I'll go back to the product team and we'll just decide, okay, what can we throw together to help sales if there's any collateral like vignettes or actual mocks of the feature, or actually building a prototype or something like that.
It is. I think one thing that's really, at least personally, really hard for me about founder-led sales is that sometimes you're very focused on closing that deal, right? Or making progress. And sometimes it's really hard to actually really remember like what you're trying to do, which is maybe like getting as fast as possible to product market fit. And sometimes that means like going against your own intuitions or just like realizing, oh shit, like this is the wrong feature. But I think as humans, we're like conditioned to almost look for evidence of our biases. And for example, in the clippings, like maybe you're looking for, hey, can I find calls where people were agreeing with me? So I've even made that mistake as a product person, where I'm like, ooh, like I just want to get to an answer as fast as possible so I can move forward. I'm curious, like, how do you guys like keep those biases in check?
I'm also curious because I am surprised by how often Troy shares the bad news. The clips for the deals that we don't win are showing up in Slack. And that just feels like such a downer, but it's so valuable. And I feel like our team really benefits from that. We have conversations afterwards. So yeah, I'm curious how you can push yourself to share that stuff.
I am so prone to be biased in favor of my own intuitions. I think what keeps me in check is that the results are going to come out in the wash anyway. And it's not my first startup. I'm not as young as I used to be. I want to get this right. And so I got to keep myself honest so my own thinking's clear. And the more I share both sides of the story, I think the more one or the other lands with the team, the more trustable the pieces of data are. And so I try. A lot of this is time constrained. I do my best. And sometimes because you're doing founder-led sales, the buck stops at your intuition about what you should and shouldn't do. You're never going to have perfect information. You have to make a bet. And sometimes if I believe it's a bet I'm willing to make and put my reputation on, and I will be found out to be wrong if I'm wrong. I'm willing to take that bet. Sure, I might be more likely in those scenarios to bias the information in my favor. But at the end of the day, I'm willing to say, whatever I use to persuade you, the goal is to persuade. And I'm willing to be looking at the scoreboard with the same eyes as you at the end of the road. And I will lose credibility over time, no matter how biased I'm being, no matter how much I curate the evidence. I will lose credibility if I'm wrong more than I'm right.
I'm also like a huge believer in incentives, just like driving how people behave. And I think that as I see it right now, you don't have an incentive to sweep the critical feedback and the reasons for losing deals under the carpet. If anything, you're quite incentivized to to give as much daylight as possible to what you see as the reasons we lost this game or the reasons we lost this deal, or like, why are we not getting on the scoreboard? Like, what's your incentive?
We used to be so bad that we wanted to turn our head at what our customers like from competitors in the early days. And I think we lost our first company. We became the number 2 because of this insecurity. We are the opposite now. Like I have literally one favorite question above all other questions to ask a prospect in the sales process. What of all of those other solutions that you're looking at, what are you seeing that you love? What else? You saw Guide today. What are you seeing from other tools that you're not seeing in Guide that you really liked? And the moment that you get customers opening up about what they liked better than you is the moment that you really understand differentiation in their eyes and their psychology, frankly. And if you ask them, what do you like about Guide that's better than the other tools? I don't learn anything, really. I don't learn as much. We learn where our gaps are, at least perceptively, in the other way. And so I think we've learned to build a resilience and a muscle and a taste for really leaning into where we're not great and being genuine in saying, where could we be better, customer? Like, where are we falling short? Selfishly, we want to get better. And being willing to take that on the chin, and you take that on the chin enough that you just start to like really get hungry for that information. It is super uncomfortable. It took us 5 years to go. I remember, I won't get into the details, but it was very hard for us to like even acknowledge our competitors in the early days with prospects. Now we're like, oh, we assume you're looking at so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. That's great. Let's talk about where Guide's different. Let's talk about where we are stronger and weaker. Let's make a decision together. Our goal is not to persuade you. It's to give you all of the information so you can pick the right fit for you.
It's a consultative selling motion, right? If Guide's not the right fit for you, I want to be the one that points you towards the thing that's going to be the right fit for you. And you build a lot of trust with those with people when you do that too. Are you going to say something, Austin?
I was just going to say it translates to existing customers too. We pipe all NPS survey submissions into a channel. Everyone's reading the low NPS scores, and they provide a description, and then everybody that's below a 10 we reach out to. So I think it's just very visible, and we should keep it that visible, not just for new prospects, but for existing customers.
Support might be worth touching on. We all have our eyes on support, which is extremely biased to what we're not doing great versus like compliments.
Sure.
Is there a lot of signal in support? What's your view there?
I don't know about a lot of signal. I think one of our advantages has always been that we are just some of the most responsive product teams around. If it's not Troy and I in the Slack channels, it's really anybody that's available. And so it can be pretty, I would say, distracting. It's probably the biggest challenge with it. But at the same time, everybody knows those things that have come up 5 times in the past 2 weeks, and that allows an engineer to just go solve the root cause. And I think it's really easy to become divorced from the day-to-day issues. And so having our approach, which is basically a Slack channel for each customer, where we're in there with the teams, allows them to just speak their mind. I'll share one story, which is that there was a period of time where one of our customers set up basically a ticket submission in Slack because they're pretty operationally excellent, and they wanted to make sure that their users were sharing like specific details with us when they submitted a support request. And we didn't have that across any of our other customers. And I thought it was pretty cool because we were getting all the information we needed in one go. So I implemented it across all the other customers, and Troy kind of like reached out. He's like, "Hey, what the fuck?" And am I allowed to say that?
I reached out. That's a very diplomatic way of putting it. I flipped my shit.
Yeah. It was I would say that.
And the reason you flipped your shit is because it felt like there was all this like extra
too much friction.
Okay, got it.
Even just filling out a little form, I was like, I don't give a shit how distracted we are right now. If 5% less feedback comes in, we're making the wrong trade-off right now.
And we would lose.
And you're both in those Slack groups, or just Austin?
We're both in every one of them, In fact, our whole team is in all of them.
Very cool.
And so you can imagine how annoying it is, right? When somebody just drops in a message, and every time you got to respond, say, "Hey, would you mind sending over that candidate's profile URL?" You get used to it over time. And so in my head, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to streamline everything for both sides. But I do agree ultimately that it's not worth it if we're going to miss even 5% of the feedback because people feel like they don't want to submit a ticket.
I think those trade-offs and how you navigate the trade-offs is really how a lot of decisions ultimately get made, and also how like culture gets established and values get established, right? Like Marc and I have a very different set of trade-offs we make about the podcast, for example. Like we discuss, I won't go into detail, but there's a bunch of mini decisions that we make about branding and editing and like guest selection and agenda and conversation and workflow. And each of these things we basically discuss like the trade-off. Sometimes we're both immediately seeing the benefit is overwhelmingly, like we can't really see even the downside, but sometimes if there's a downside, just like the conversation about the downside and the trade-off is what allows us to then be more aligned about what we want to do in the future. And it sounds like maybe in this example, the trade-off was between increasing friction for creating support tickets versus increasing the signal that we get with every support ticket that maybe reduces the amount of time we have to spend getting to the root cause of it. So do we value how fast we can get to the root issue more than we value the total number of issues we get to address? And Troy's view, you're saying, I want to get all of the support tickets coming in, even if it takes us twice or three times as long to resolve each of them. That's more important. Is that a fair summary?
And I think the reality is, if we really want to solve that other problem of decreasing resolution time, there's 10 creative ways we could solve it. So we didn't have that goal. We didn't set out to go solve that problem. I just saw something our customer did and said, oh, I'm just going to apply it. But yeah. I think if we had that goal, we could do it without sacrificing the total number of issues.
Curious, because I think that's such a good idea to have customer, like direct access to Slack for customers. And I think that's probably the dream of a lot of product leaders. A lot of them even try to get them in text, get them in medium that they're using all the time. Maybe it's iMessage, maybe it's WhatsApp, whatever. I'm curious, is it hard to get people to start using those channels? And maybe is that a bad signal in itself if they're not using the channel? And maybe like, what are some tactics that you've used over time to get people to be engaged in those channels? Because like, I think they can be such a superpower if done right.
These have been a total game changer for how we build product. Because we have folks in Slack, I would say the number one way to prime a Slack channel with a customer to engage is to be extremely responsive when they do. So if they send their very first message, they have a question, they're a little anxious, they don't really know if they'll ever hear back, but fuck it, I'm stuck, let me send a message. And in 60 seconds, they have a response. They're like, oh shit, next time that they have a problem, they go, this is small, but I might hear back right away. And then that, it's a high cost, but it creates an engine of expectation that they're going to get unblocked immediately, and they can rely on us to get unblocked. So I think the number one thing that we do is just we're super responsive, and we're fans of no updates. If we don't have anything new on this topic, we let them know, hey, we weren't able to get a resolution on this today. We'll be back in touch tomorrow. Is that cool? We've gotten creative over time and asking customers, hey, how high priority is this? This is blocking you right now. Would you be okay with a resolution in a week? And we let them make the choice, because then if they say, yeah, a week works, they're not disappointed when it takes a week versus an hour. We stack it behind the other stuff. So we put it back on them as much. And that's just one thought. I think we use emojis. We throw in feature updates and Loom videos in there, like versus email, because we know we have them in Slack. So we do things like that. We also we celebrate customers giving us feedback positively. We'll throw a bunch of funny emojis. We'll make it personal. It's a little more personal in there. We want to be the fun Slack channel to the degree we can. When you get on a QBR with us and you get on a sales call with us, we want to be the fun call of your day. Informative, but also like enjoyable, not stodgy, not transactional, not like too buttoned up. Like we want you to leave and be like laughing and giggling throughout. And I think we believe in that.
If I was going to take a magic ball, I would say that's probably like a pretty big retention play for you guys too, right? It's like they probably don't want to disappoint you guys. They have probably an emotional connection. They appreciate you. They get to know you as humans. So that's pretty cool.
Maybe.
Too.
Yeah.
I'll say something. Yeah.
Just selfishly, the product team, once the Slack channel is created, it's not created for the product team to go do research, right? It's created so that we can answer your support requests, and we get you onboarded and we answer your support requests. But we are never wanting for pinging somebody with a design mock or a Loom. And you can drop it in the channel if you want the full group to see it. Or the amount of times that I just Slack DM a random user, and I get a response every time. It's a 100% hit rate. I don't know how other companies do that, but we can basically get direct access fairly quickly to really high quality product feedback from users just because they're all in these team Slack channels.
Yeah. And just, I know we're at time, but I'm a big believer in if you can record a 1-minute loom, just like summarizing an idea or showing a vignette and just like asking, just give me reactions on a scale of 1 to 10. Like, how exciting would this be? Or the more honest, the better. If you actually hate this, you're making my life much easier by telling me that. But if you want this tomorrow, please tell me, or yesterday. And I think by just forcing people to come up with extreme emotions by using some like visual artifact in that way, versus let's get on a 30-minute call. I want to walk you through some stuff we're thinking about doing, like the amount of friction for getting a customer to do that. Then consider it if you think about it. If you have one thing you want my thoughts on, just send me a loom and I'll send you a loom in response, or I'll tell you I hate it or I love it.
The willingness to get on a 30-minute call, I will argue, is it correlates to the degree of the pain the user has, how much value they'd get from you solving the thing.
Yeah.
If they're in a ton of pain, they are super happy to get on a 30-minute call with you because any hope that you solve it is worth the time.
I would just say make sure you need 30 minutes to have your questions answered to ask for it, versus if this could have been an email, don't take up 30 minutes of my time, right? So that's the balance.
Unless you're trying to validate, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. If you're trying to validate whether this is worth doing at all and somebody's not willing to get on a 30-minute call with you, it's interesting information.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Okay. I could have kept going. This has been amazing. I think we covered all the ground we wanted to talk about.
We should have on a 30-minute call about it.
Talk to me in 3 weeks.
I feel like your product process has been validated. Like you guys are freaking crushing it.
Marc, I agree. I think one of the things you guys said as a goal or a hope for this conversation is maybe improve the way that you work. And sure, there's some ways you could improve it, but man, you guys doing a bunch of the right stuff as far as I'm concerned. And I might be wrong, so if I'm not the canonical truth, but you're doing all the important things. You've got the feedback loops in place. You guys are selling ahead of the product. You're letting the market pull you where it needs to go. You're being extremely responsive and offering an incredible customer experience to the people that are betting on you and giving you their budgets. And you're staying in tune with what they love about other products in the market so that you're not caught blindsided by your gaps. And you're not falling in love with some vision that is disconnected from the current market's needs. And especially in this environment where things are evolving so fast, like you don't really have the luxury of saying no to near-term opportunities that are real for today's market, because who knows where the market's going to be in 2 years. And I think maybe next time we talk more about vision. But anyways, in closing, I want to thank you guys for coming on. And then where can people learn more about what you're both respectively thinking and talking about? And then how can they be helpful?
Our website, guy.co, is like it's the master marketing vignette. So tell us what you think or check it out. And Austin and I are both on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. If you ever get a candidate portal in your interview process, check the URL, see if it has guide.co in it. We'd love to know what you think if you're interviewing and you go through the process with our product.
I love it. Marc, any closing thoughts?
No, I'm just inspired. I think the Slack bit is so cool. I think the fact that you have direct access to every customer just one Slack away and that everyone's responsive, that's just such an edge that I think a lot of startups would dream of having. Just from that trend, I feel like you guys are going to do well.
And I'll say that I've been on the other side of that, by the way, like where I've been doing some fractional product work with a Series A company, and one of the company's partners or vendors has set up a Slack channel, and they are very responsive when we ask questions about things. And I can tell you that certainly boosted, like the founder CEO of, I don't know, like a multi-$100 million startup is responding within 30 seconds to questions in that channel. And that makes us feel important.
Yep.
So I can vouch to the value there.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Super
fun.
fun.
We should have done this 6 years ago. We might have figured some things out faster.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. This is a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Appreciate it.
That's a wrap.
Thanks.